Guys, give me a second. I got to figure out where this buzz is coming from. It just started right when I started the thing. All right. Greetings. Welcome back to Blackbird News, where everything is connected. How y'all doing? Good to see you. Thanks for being here. Yeah, I don't know. What? There's a lot of people. Oh, no. I'm confused now. What? Anyways, we're live on YouTube, Rockfin, Colin, and on Twitter. And, general amount of weirdness going on today and every day. But there are a few people watching on Twitter. Well, welcome. Let's see. Delene, this time last week it was 28 Fahrenheit. Today it is 70 Fahrenheit, East Coast, Virginia. My wasps are coming out from hibernation. Yeah, that's weird. It is weird. Yeah, the weather is freaking wacky. And I just got an update today on a possibility of some California weather. It is really concerning if it has any merit. It's 70 degrees in Virginia, really? That is wild. It's 70 degrees. That's wild. I see that it's, I don't know, 40s and 50s near in New York and Washington. Anyways. Clayton says high of 2 last week, high of 60 this week. Yeah, extreme weather just keeps on getting more extreme, right? And all of this is maybe this has to do too with things going down, things collapsing, the ability to grow food getting more difficult. Maybe the thing with the people in charge and food. They say it's about climate change, or they say it's about regulations that are to benefit your health. But worldwide, people are resisting these initiatives that are revamping our food sources or the ability for people to grow food. I've seen a couple of relevant things posted. Oh, so all right, let's see if we can find this. So in Germany, they the farmers came out big time against some of the government's proposals. There were. I don't know. There are I know there are different takes on this, and some people might say, well, maybe the government shouldn't subsidize farmers or certain types of farming, and I get all those arguments. But at a time when farming is quickly becoming precarious, and a lot of it is due to climate, and people that want to insist that the climate thing is a bunch of hooey should actually, I don't know, walk outside their door. Anyways, in France too, they're really upset about all of this. French farmers are now dumping garbage on the train tracks in protest of government policies. They sprayed manure on government buildings, blocked the motorways. They are blocking trains. And good on the people of France, Germany, Europe in general. They just seem to have a better protest muscle than we do. We can't seem to get mad about anything. Let's see. Not mad enough. I mean, there are people out protesting, genocide, which is should make you mad. Let's see. Let's read about this. French farmers block roads with tractors as protests over pay and regulations spread to Brussels. Rising costs regulations have spread to new parts of the country, and Brussels as union leaders prepare to reveal a list of 40 demands to end their roadblocks. So, who wants to be jailed? Sure. That's pretty wild, Osama. 73 degrees on Friday. From intense cold to unseasonable warmth. It's pretty wild. But is this move, if you want to think about it or think through it, or maybe one thing that might be happening, is this a move that takes farming out of the hands of smaller farmers and puts it into the hands of big ag corporate farmers? Well, that certainly seems to be one of the things that might be at play here. Denver, I'm seeing your posts about BRICS. What do you think about what do you think about BRICS or Belt and Road Initiative? Do you think this is a real anti-establishment type movement? Do you think this is going to create a situation that's actually going to do people some good in the long run, or is it just another form of empire? I don't know. BRICS is the distraction. BRI is the real arrangement. Belt and Road Initiative. I mean, all of it just seems like more a way for people to align with more production, development. Which to some people isn't a bad thing, but maybe if you're looking at the totality of the planet and what humans are doing, yeah. Is it going to be any good for people? I don't know. Anyways, let's get back to this article. Farmers have set up tractor blockades along a main road in Brittany, northern France, following in the footsteps of farmers in the south of the country who began protesting at the weekend. French farmers were also joined on Wednesday by their Belgian counterparts in Brussels. One farmer hung a plastic cow painted in the blue of the EU flag from a JCB near the European Parliament. Arnaud Rousseau, head of the powerful FNSEA farming union, also told France 2 TV he cannot rule out the possibility of protests spreading to the Paris region. It comes after a 36-year-old farmer and her 12-year-old daughter died after they were struck by a car while taking part in a roadblock in Toulouse, southern France, on Tuesday. However, anyways, well, I guess that's what sparked the protest, but protests are the first major challenge for the newly appointed Prime Minister Gabriel Attal, who took office 2 weeks ago after his predecessor resigned amid pressure from Emmanuel Macron. Mr. Attal met with representatives from farmers' unions on Tuesday. Farming policy has long been a sensitive issue in France, the European Union's biggest agricultural producer, with thousands of independent producers of wine. Independent producers, that's probably the key right there, right? Independent producers of wine, meat, and dairy products. Farmers also have a track record of disruptive protests. Particular protests are over a series of long-standing grievances, including low wages, burdensome regulations, fuel taxes, and the impact of EU-enforced environmental rules that they say place even greater pressure on the sustainability of their businesses. They follow similar protests in other European countries, including Italy, Germany, and the Netherlands, where protests sparked a wave in popularity towards the right-wing populist party, the Farmer Citizen Movement. Meanwhile, in France, the farmers have received wholehearted support from Marine Le Pen's far-right Rassemblement National Party, whose president, Jordan Bardella, accused Mr. Macron of plotting the death of French agriculture. Farmers want more growth. Well, like as I said earlier, there seems to be two factions of thought regarding these. As some people think, well, we should have these regulations. The EU is doing well. Case in point, the EU doesn't allow Roundup and glyphosate and stuff like that to be used, which is a good thing. What was another one that I read the other day? That was actually a positive. They outlaw, certain things that in the U.S. are allowable. So, Rich China says no mention of increased prices on fertilizer and herbicides, and there are a lot of factors that play for sure. I think that people are really upset about, we're living in a time of Inflation, right? Um, and it's getting harder. Farmers like other small business owners are getting squeezed out of markets because the profit margins get smaller and smaller, the costs get bigger. Um, and if you're a smaller business, you do have to pass those costs on to your customers. But if the larger conglomerates can right, um, if they can outprice you based on that how most large corporations do or larger conglomerates do, right? It's by doing everything in bulk and getting everything just slightly cheaper than the competition, right? They can undercut the prices of the independents and small businesses, and that's how they get squeezed out of business. Of course, there's corporate greed involved too, sure. Um, but it's an interesting thing going on there. We don't seem to have, those issues going on in the U.S. Although I do hear a lot of, their small farms are having a hard time in the U.S. Small farmers are having a hard time in the U.S. And we have massive, massive industrial agriculture here. Global solidarity. American chemical industry has their greedy hands on other countries to make them use GMO. I wonder. Again, my gut intuitive take on this is, um, cut out the small farmer, cut out the independent, squeeze them out of business, so that industrial, large scale corporate industrial farming can take over, which is what is the case in the U.S. Right? We have a lot of large scale industrial farming. Small farmers in the U.S. are not not as big as they used to be. Right? Nobody farms. Um, so maybe that's their plan. I don't know. I did see something about a vertical organic farm in southern Europe catching on fire just yesterday. Who knows? But here they're trying to they have this thing about trying to register your. We talked about it the other day, registering your backyard garden with the USDA, right? So that they can regulate, right? So they can regulate how you're gardening your food in your backyard. I mean, that's the extent to which they want people to stop growing their own food here. They want to make sure that the way that you're growing food is up to the standards of the USDA. What standards, you might say? Right? They're putting Amish farmers, people that are growing food outside of the regulatory system in the U.S. They're trying to put them out of business. So that is a front on which people are fighting in it. You know, climate change or not, regulations or not, I think it's fair, and I think it's right for small farmers to stay in business. If we let the ability to grow food go to the conglomerates, then that's one more way in which we've lost the power over our own agency over our own lives. I did see another really kind of amazing, interesting post this morning. Victory sent me this. Along the same lines, you lost power, Osama? What happened? Poppy says, keep your government hands off my egos. Yes. It's from Concerned Citizen reposting this. The carbon footprint of homegrown food 5 times greater than those grown conventionally. Conventionally. Homegrown food is conventional, is the conventional way of growing. Growing on large-scale farms with pesticides and all these inputs, that is not the conventional way of growing food. Sorry. Oh, Transformer Blue. Jeez. Dang. Anyways, this is ridiculous. The carbon footprint is 5 times greater. That is absolute. I mean, that can't even, there can't be any science that backs that up whatsoever. They're just saying things. And they, Concerned Citizen says, just F off already. How do they even come up with this garbage? The media is a virus. Do we even want to find this article? I'm a little frightened. This article reminds me of there used to be a billboard that they put up a billboard in LA this is like a year ago, I guess. I don't see them anymore. But they're like, washing your car in the driveway uses 100 gallons of water. I was like, who is using 100 gallons of water to wash their car? I mean, that is patently false. And I hope they took these down because people called whoever put these up, the water and power companies. Hope people called them up and just said, this is stupid. 100 gallons of water. 100 gallons of water is the only way you could use 100 gallons of water washing your car in the driveway is if you turn the hose on, sprayed your car down, and left that hose just running the whole, and then you're like, right? You washed your car for an hour, slowly with the suds, and you're looking at the water just running out on your driveway. That's the only way you could use 100 gallons of water washing. I mean, it was so stupid. And why would you, don't wash your car at home? Like, what, huh? It just didn't make any sense. It was so ridiculous. But it was it was couched as a conserve water thing. Look, I wash my car in my driveway. I don't even use I don't even use a half a gallon of water. It doesn't take that much water to wash your car. Like, seriously. I might use like a half a gallon if I even turn the hose on and put it on my car. But you don't even need to turn your hose on. You could just get a wet towel and wipe your car down, wash your car that way. Like, you just don't need that much water. Even if if you were like really sloppy, like you would use like 5 gallons of water. Like if you were super sloppy washing your car, but 100 gallons. So they just made this number up out of nowhere. It's just ridiculous. Whatever. Now, that made me question, like, why are they doing that? Why would they put that billboard up to get you to not, 100 gallons of water? Oh, I better not wash my car in my driveway. Like, first of all, you have to be, one of the most clueless people ever in life. If you actually believe that. If you actually looked at that and went like, oh, yeah, sounds good. Don't wash your car in the driveway. Take it to your friendly car wash where they got machines for that. Whatever standard machine sounds. I need a soundboard. Statistics are used to misdirect. So again, this article is like that billboard, like really 5 times greater the carbon footprint. Get out of here. The carbon footprint of your backyard garden is 5 times lower than industrialized agriculture. Has to be 5 times lower, unless you're being really sloppy. right? You have to be just incredibly sloppy, and I don't know how it's possible. I don't even know how it's even possible to have a 5 times carbon footprint of growing your food in the backyard. Like, not even. You're not using any machines, right? For one thing. Like, how many machines do you possibly need if you're growing food in your backyard? Probably not many. Read it? You want me to read it? I don't know. I don't even know if I want to read it. Yeah, I mean, for one thing, the machine input alone and probably the water input alone, I just don't even see how that could be possible. But hold on. I mean, that doesn't make sense on any on any level whatsoever. Okay, hold on. Homegrown food. Let's see if I can find it. See if I can find it. Oh, because it's in Yahoo News. Here we go. Carbon footprint of homegrown food 5 times. Let's see if what they say makes any sense. Let's see if they have anything good for us. Growing your own food in an allotment may not be as good for the environment as expected. CO2 produced. Growing food in different types of urban farms found that on average, serving of food made from traditional farms. What does that mean? For individual gardens. So the impact is 5 times higher at 0.35 kilograms of carbon, CO2 per portion for individual gardens. Well, let's see. The majority of the emissions do not come from growing of the food themselves, but from the infrastructure needed to allow the food to be grown. Say what? This is like, okay. The most significant contributor to carbon emissions on the urban agriculture sites we studied was the infrastructure used to grow the food, from raised beds to garden sheds to pathways. What? Okay. These constructions had a lot of carbon invested in their construction. This is just ridiculous. Poorly managed compost and other synthetic inputs can also be important contributors. Let's see. Find that urban farmers and gardeners can reduce their net impact by focusing on foods that are high carbon in conventional agriculture. What? 2 examples of this we identify are greenhouse grown crops. But I thought the greenhouse added carbon. Okay. Including many tomatoes and crops that are often flown in from across the... What? And there's another thing that, I mean, doesn't make any sense. This is absolutely bullshit and false, right? Because again, if you're growing food in a regular, what they say is a conventional farm, you have all these, you have tractors and right, all kinds of machines going, and you have trucks coming in to take take it away. You probably have people coming in to, maybe you're hiring field hands, and the carbon intensity has to just be off the charts. And then you're shipping this food out to the local supermarkets, and that include, putting the food in the supermarkets. That's carbon intense. I mean, come on now. Growing food in your backyard and and then harvesting it and bringing it in your house has to be one of the most carbon-free things you could possibly do on the planet. This is just, no. This is a no. This is an absolute no. You don't want to build a pathway. All that carbon in your garden pathway is adding so much carbon to your backyard garden. My God. But they don't actually, what they leave out of this article is like, well, I'm walking into my backyard and I'm growing my food, probably with a lot less water, probably with a lot less inputs. I don't have to be trucked in. or flown in and then trucked in, right? I don't know. Maybe all the stuff you get from Home Depot is super high carbon, and I don't know, whatever. But no, this is dumb. Nothing about this makes any sense. And they're leaving all the externalities, right? It's, what someone the other day brought up as externalities. They're leaving all the externalities out of the conventionally grown food. Conventional. So they flip the idea of growing food, like growing food on a industrial scale farm is conventional. It's not conventional. People have grown their own food for centuries, right? The new way of growing food is unconventional. The way we've been growing food in the last 100 years, industrial, sized farming, big fat ag, right? Forcing people to stop. People are forced into cities and they have jobs and they don't grow their own food anymore. The new way we grow food is unconventional. That is unconventional. No. So they've even got the label twisted here. Anyways, I'm sorry. This is just a way to get you to like not grow your own food. That's all it is to get you to go, what? Oh no. I care about I'm concerned about climate change and I care about I better not grow food in my garden. The thing that they're blaming is so stupid. Use recycled wood and building materials because man, all the carbon that just building a raised bed out of wood contains. My God. Oh my God. Don't replace those aging sheds and garden beds. Because man, the carbon involved in in your backyard shed is off the charts. Okay. Anyways. No, this is dumb. This is dumb. This is wrong. This is false. This is misleading. This is obviously really just insanely incompetent way of trying to make people feel like they shouldn't grow their own food. Come on now. Come on. And nobody's buying it, right? Nobody's buying this one. Nobody's buying what you're selling people. They want you to, just go to the store, buy vegetables from the store, because climate change. It's way better for the climate if you just go to the store, get in your car, and drive your car to the store. It's way better for the climate than walking into your backyard and picking some vegetables and bringing them into your house. Somehow that's more carbon intensive. They'll try anything. Anyways, it's just so dumb. William, give me a second, man. I want to talk about a couple more things before I take any calls. The rototiller was made in the 70s. Yeah. I mean, now if you have a bigger farming operation and you are like tractoring and rototilling and, you've got, if you're like a bigger than a backyard garden, you got a small farm or a ranch, then your carbon inputs and outputs start getting a little bigger. Right? And if you're keeping animals, right, then you got to get, the feed and the inputs for your animals. It's probably a little more. But if you have a small farm, small backyard garden or farm, with a couple of chickens or maybe some goats, seriously, you're not You're not producing 5 times. It just, that cannot be. That cannot be. You can't, like, there's no way. They left a big bunch of inputs and outputs from bigger farming out of that equation in order to come up with that number. It absolutely had to be. They left all the externalities out in order to, make you feel like, well, I better not replace my backyard shed. Oh, think of the carbon I'll produce. They're not convincing anybody with this one. Oh, okay. All right. I was going to read this article, a bit of this article here. I do think, though, in a world that's, I might actually theoretically be behind, better farming practices to help the planet. I would be behind it if it wasn't, if they were including industrial scale farming in those practices, right? If they were not exempting or carbon offsetting, huge conglomerates that are doing farming, right? If they weren't just applying these things to small farmers or family farmers and not, larger farmers too. I don't know. Sorry, what am I looking at? I was trying to look at something here. I'm trying to look. I really am. I'm trying to look out. Okay. Let's see. This article is called Good Luck with Collapse. Grandma blowing kids $150K inheritance on a cruise. Gen Z is left holding the bag as civilization crumbles. I recently read about a 78-year-old grandmother who is blowing her kids' inheritance on a $150,000 3-month. $150,000 for a cruise, for a 3-month cruise? Golly. Go out with a bang, I guess. Put aside, if you can, the fact that this cruise is an egregious display of consumerism. Let's ignore, if possible, the destruction the cruise industry wreaks on the planet. Instead, let's consider whether she is being selfish. Unlike those who lived through the late 20th century, young adults and children today face a perilous future, one punctuated by declining living standards, scarcity, and violence. Young generations need all the help they can get. Does Grandma have a moral obligation to share that $150,000 with her descendants? Grandma's perspective, it's her money. It's Grandma's money, and she can do what she wants with it. She worked hard all her life and deserves to spend her last years enjoying herself. From her perspective, she's fulfilled her duty as a mother and a grandmother. She raised her children to be fully competent and independent adults. Isn't that the goal of any parent in the natural world? She would argue she doesn't owe anything to anyone except herself. Western society is individualistic in nature, so many would agree she's entitled to do as she pleases, even if her spending choices are questionable. Do parents have an obligation to their kids and grandkids? In contrast, I believe parents are obligated to do everything they can to support, not enable, their children and grandchildren. No child asked to be born, so parents have a moral obligation to help within reason, even as kids reach adulthood. She clarifies, within reason means individuals still have to live their lives. I'm not proposing grandparents live in a cardboard box and eat cat food and give every penny they have to their descendants. I'm simply suggesting that where possible, grandparents should consider foregoing extravagant, unnecessary expenses like a 3-month cruise. Likewise, I believe people also have a moral obligation to help their parents and grandparents. Of course, intergenerational trauma would change the calculus. Despite adult children gaining independence, I believe parents should still provide support. Education, skills development, housing, child rearing, and daily chores are all ways parents can help. Some have different means, but parents should generally do what they can to improve the lives and futures of their families. Some parents can't help financially, others can help financially, others can't. That's okay, not everyone was dealt the same hand in life. Everyone would agree that underage dependents should be fully supported. However, many argue that the obligation ends as kids become independent adults. Many parents and grandparents, such as the one I mentioned above, have a laissez-faire attitude to family financial cohesion. These parents feel they completed their duty by the time the kids were off to university and now they're on their own. Frankly, I used to think this way too. It's probably something I picked up from my parents. But the more I learned about what the future holds, the more I saw why the family must remain unified rather than a struggling collection of individual components. Social and economic cohesion builds resilience, and that begins with the family. Perhaps there was a time a self-reliant person could pull themselves up by their bootstraps and make a small fortune. There are many baby boomers who built lucrative careers crowned by lucrative defined benefit pensions with only a high school education. Moreover, baby boomers benefited from an economic tailwind as the post-war peace dividend, green revolution, and secular decline in interest rates boosted growth and asset prices worldwide. This economic tailwind was made possible by easily accessible cheap fossil fuels and the exploitation of our environment. Virtually free energy and technological advancements enabled by energy created the surplus that elevated human prosperity. With this surplus, human civilization for the first time could afford to house, feed, educate, and provide for billions of people. Those in the West benefited the most. In addition, by ignoring the environmental costs of this surplus, older generations effectively embezzled from the planet while deferring the repercussions to their descendants. Pretty much on the nose. Prosperity lost. Around the turn of the century, energy became more difficult and expensive to find and extract. Consequently, civilization has started bumping into hard limits, and real wealth creation for the average person has slowed considerably. We see this manifested in the cost of living crisis, widening wealth inequality, the global march towards fascism, or whatever that means, and geopolitical threats. This means that younger generations are disadvantaged compared to previous generations. The free lunch afforded to baby boomers has vanished as cheap energy is depleted and deferred environmental costs come to bear. Gen Z is left holding the bag, while boomers used their unearned gains to take extravagant vacations. Laissez-faire parenting might have worked with the baby boomers because so many other invisible hands were lifting that generation. In contrast, Gen X, millennials, and especially Gen Z have minimal support outside the family unit. Frankly, the only young adults I see getting ahead are the ones who are either super lucky or received significant help from their parents. Hard work isn't enough anymore. The cost of the baby boomers' windfall rests on Gen Z, which is inheriting a world of violence and want. They need all the help they can get, and previous generations, especially family members, have a moral obligation to help in any way they can. Does it even matter? According to the story I read, if Grandma hadn't taken a 3-month cruise, each of her grandchildren would have received a $25,000 inheritance. Oh, shoot. It's not a life-altering amount. I've just forgot something I wanted to talk about. I really wanted to talk about today. And some would argue money is useless where we are headed, so does it even matter? Money might be useless at some point in the future, but today money means something. Today, money can buy skills, tools, resources, and knowledge needed to improve resilience as we enter this new world. The money could also help the grandchildren pool together to buy land and move to a more resilient location. Maybe the money simply is used to put food on the table. Many people are struggling just to get through the next month, never mind the next decade. The cost of living has soared and will continue to rise if resources become more scarce. Importantly, asking, does it even matter, implies near-term civilization collapse to a point where money is meaningless. While this may be on the horizon, nobody knows when or how this could happen. There's no sense writing off the future just because it will likely get bad at some point. Um, shoot. It's getting. I thought this was a shorter article. Oh, it is. Anyways, thought it was going on and on. The problem with writing off the future during the height of the AIDS pandemic or epidemic of the 1980s and 1990s, patients diagnosed with HIV received a death sentence. They had months to live, years if they were lucky. Many reacted accordingly, spending down their life savings, quitting their jobs, and abandoning the future. For a long time, this made perfect sense. With no descendants, who would they leave it to? However, as treatment improved, there came a point to which HIV no longer guaranteed death. And they're leaving out the whole AZT Dr. Fauci thing. Anyways, unfortunately, if you could foresee this turning point, many HIV patients went broke, unprepared for a future they never thought existed. From the article in the San Francisco Chronicle, in the darkest years of the epidemic in the 1980s and 90s, AIDS was almost always fatal. The prognosis was a few years, maybe a few months. These men, then in their 20s and 30s, weren't supposed to make it to 40. Now some are 60 years old, even 70, still alive but wounded physically, psychologically, and economically. For many, time stopped when they were diagnosed. They let go of futures they had no reason to believe would ever arrive. So they have no savings, no retirement money, no strategy for continuing to live in a city that's increasingly unaffordable. Over the next decade or so, many will need financial aid when private disability benefits run out. By the way, that's a really good metaphor for pretty much anything involving collapse, right? Because this year is the year it's all falling apart, right? It's been that way since 2015, at least, since I've really been paying attention to, more alternative news sources. But every year is the year it's going to collapse. And if you actually live you can't really live like that, because if you take it super seriously, then you're just in you're in flight mode, right? You're in oh my God, constant on the edge prepper mode, oh my God, it's all going to collapse. Here goes over the falls, right? You make life choices, if you're still around 10 years later and everything's kind of semi-normal 10 years later, you could actually shoot yourself kind of in the foot. So don't, you got to do a little of both. You got to kind of prepare for the collapse, but you also kind of have to expect that life will go on in a semi-normal way. How would you conduct yourself if you're going to still be here 5 or 10 years, 20 years from now, right? So, anyways. Or as Guy McPherson put it, don't stop flossing your teeth. One example, I guess. For many, time stopped when they were diagnosed. They let go of futures they had no reason to believe would ever arrive. And I read that. I see the same thing happening today with today's young adults. Many have completely written off the future due to the climate collapse, or war, or something else. They've given up on education, a career, and investing. Many are pre-planning their eventual suicides. Investing for the future sounds cute when the walls around us are crumbling, but assuming we have no future can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. At best, collapse is a drawn-out process in which money and savings still have a purpose. My point is we don't know what will happen in the future. We need to be realistic about humanity's predicament, but at the same time, we must balance living today with living tomorrow. So the decision grandma makes about her money and the support she can provide to her descendants is important. Final thoughts: compared to their ancestors, the younger generation has been dealt a bad hand. Life, something that they never asked for in the first place, is becoming increasingly harsh. Humanity is entering a period of great uncertainty and potentially collapse. Older generations that benefited from the spoils of economic luck and environmental exploitation must do everything they can to support their descendants. I don't know. I live in LA where I see a lot of frickin' spoiled knuckleheads. There's a lot of money in LA. There's a lot of people that are super, pretty dang wealthy. Even on the lower end of super rich, they're pretty well off, and all their kids are just spoiled jerks. And they just drive around in really nice cars. They have no clue what reality is. They have absolutely no clue what's going on in the world. They're completely self-absorbed, spoiled little rich kids. There's a lot of those people around. So I don't know that that's necessarily a good thing to have. That's not a way to raise your child either, because those kids are going to drive their super cool, nice car right into a freaking wall. Either literally or metaphorically, they're going to drive that car right into the wall. So I don't know. Guy McPherson doesn't think eating less meat is good for the environment. I mean, I don't know that it. There are people that will insist. If you're not totally vegan, then you're a murderer of the planet. I don't. I think it's helpful. I think generally eating meat is probably a better way to go, but I'm not I'm not a militant about it. And I'm not going to judge people for eating meat, It depends on how it's grown too. Where do you get your meat from? Do you grow your own meat? Do you have your own, do you make your own eggs? Do you make your own eggs? But you know what I'm saying. Do you have a local source for meat? Or do you eat, meat grown in Brazil on a deforested plantation? Where does it come from? It's very important. Anyways, William, how you doing? Thanks for waiting. I'm sorry for the long wait.
Hey, Kev, a lot to talk about there. Let me touch first on John Javon's How to Grow More Vegetables in Less Space Than You Ever Managed out of Santa Cruz.
Uh-huh.
Bible on how to do your raised bed gardening. Have you ever heard of this? Or
no, but I know people that do. There's somebody here in the city I live in. I actually realized that I haven't seen any of their posts. I wonder if they're okay. Since COVID, I think all their posts kind of went down, but maybe something happened. Anyways, there's somebody who lives in just a regular house in Pasadena that grows a massive amount of food in their own backyard, like an organic. They are organic farmers, and they can grow just huge amounts of food on a little tiny plot. And that they had like an Instagram channel, and they just showed all the food they were growing every day. So it's like people can grow a lot of food on a small plot of land.
Right, and that. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, John Javon's, if people haven't heard about it, you can check it out. It's companion planting. Certain plants are protagonists and antagonists to one another. So you can companion plant in close proximity. The raised beds are double dug with a special spade. So you're not using any wood. You follow what I mean? You're actually digging down the earth to shovel, and you're amending the soil. So it's called a raised bed because it causes the volume of the soil to kind of puff up because you aerate it, and also you incorporate some amendments. But it doesn't even require any wood. And the companion planting process enables hand watering where you minimize water inputs. It's actually extremely efficient, and you can grow a ton of produce on a little bit of land, like you said. So I just want to recommend this again. It's John Javon's out of Santa Cruz. I think that was Santa Cruz University. I'm not sure state. But anyway, How to Grow More Vegetables on Less Space Than You Ever Imagined is the title. And so we listened to the article you were talking about. This is total propaganda. Like what method were people using to back row garden is even described, and what inputs, what were they getting out of it? There's nothing but generalities in that article you're reading. They're unsubstantiated.
That article was just full of falsehoods, just completely misleading, just absolute garbage. I mean, they're trying to make you think that and plus you only build, even if you used a raised bed and you went to Home Depot and bought the lumber, how much wood are you using? For one thing. And how, you're not building your bed every year. You build a raised bed and it lasts for years. You know what I mean? One raised bed will, they last for a long time, right? I see people with unused raised beds in their front yards around my neighborhood, right? Because people get all excited about, I'm going to garden, and they build a bed, and then they grow vegetables for 1 year, and then they're like, all right, enough of that. Those raised beds are still there. Like they've been there for like a long time, right? They last for years. Like it's just so stupid. It's just so dumb.
Let me add also, there's a lot of, well, let's see, if you go by any construction site in the container, you see scrap lumber. If you talk to people, you get to know local builders. Say, look, can I come in? They're happy to have you take it because it reduces the amount.
Yeah.
Then they have to, so you get scrap lumber job sites. You can, there's actually, gosh, there was an organization here, I forget, where they actually recycle everything from homes. What Carter was involved in it. What was it called? Where they actually, it's nationwide too, where they use recycled fixtures. Now that's different. That's built. That's like toilets and bathtubs and stuff like that, and fixtures. But
yeah. Well, if you can source your materials from a,
right,
that is better. But even if you don't, even if you go to the Home Depot and get your stuff, like it's still not anywhere the inputs that a big farm is using. Like not at all, not even close. Like they just left a whole bunch of stuff out of that equation, and I just so dumb. So dumb.
Can I touch on the next subject you touched on real quick? I know you probably want to wrap things up, but the other thing about generational families, like the Netflix scene, I Care a Lot, where you end up in a probate problem with siblings. A lot of times, that money that may be left to siblings ends up soaked up by the lawyers, the executor.
Yep.
It's unbelievable how it gets fleeced. And I was in Facebook group, Kevin. We saw that, and I told you again. You could see it online. Joe Castellano out of Wallingford was a court-appointed accountant on my father's probate matter. He went to prison for fraud and Ponzi schemes. So the whole system is dirty, soaking up people's inheritance. Which is a key issue. And when siblings, just to make a final point on this, try and negotiate with their siblings. Once you get lawyers involved, they assign a court-appointed accountant, an executor. Yeah. They're billing out at $350 an hour times how many? You got your lawyer, their lawyer, you got the accountant, you got the executor. There it goes.
I think that's why you got to really have a very detailed, extremely detailed will. Like this is what this goes to you, this goes to you, this goes to you. This is how it's going to go to you. No, you don't even need the lawyers involved, right? No, you don't.
Here's the problem. Any sibling can challenge that under what they call undue influence, and they can challenge it in the probate court. Now, the judge is in a predicament because they can claim that the person was partly incapable mentally when they signed that, and the undue influence of the sibling who was caring for them most of the time. You see what I mean? It can always be challenged, even those what you think are protected wills. You see what I mean? So the best thing is to keep the communications open. Also, the siblings supporting one another is the biggest help. You know what I mean? Like that's, we're talking about a grandma who wants to go on a cruise who raised how many generations? We don't know the sacrifices she made throughout her life, and who's to say whether they were there for her when she needed her lawn cut or her hedges pruned.
Exactly. Sure.
They could have been neglected. Right. I was at grandma's, time family. You go over there when the snow, you're shoveling both driveways, you're cutting their lawns. You know what I mean? Not every family goes up that way. Yeah. So it's individual. I just wanted to touch on some of the other aspects to consider. I don't think we can generalize how that and make a broad. Yes, the economic things you talk about are so true. I'm not denying that. And that's where I think the siblings really kind of help one another and keep the unit together. But I didn't see that in my family, and when I was in Facebook groups, that wasn't the norm.
Yeah, I think the author of that article was kind of speaking to keeping a family unified, right? Sure. And you do that before, that's a process that's a lifetime, takes a lifetime. Right? Yeah. And so, you hope that your family is unified to the point where it's like, you don't care what's in the will, right?
Right.
You don't give a shit. Like, okay, we all, are here. We're all equal. This is our family. We, we support each other, and supporting our relative, our grandmother or grandfather in old age, and right, like you just, your family unit should be a family unit, long before you're worried about who's spending what and who's getting what. Anyways, I don't know. Anyways, William, thank you so much. I want to cover one more thing before I get out of here, but thanks for calling.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, one other thing that I meant to cover, I was talking about we were talking about the flooding in San Diego yesterday, and we were talking about atmospheric rivers and whatnot in California. This is very interesting because I was just if y'all read Ministry of the Future, there's an article about there's a chapter in that book about a massive rainstorm in Southern California that basically like floods the entire like Los Angeles area, right? And there is a chapter in the book, and it kind of goes through it. I was like, man, that's a lot of water. That would be a lot of water to do that. However, historically, there have been stories about floods so massive in California and the Central Plains that the entire inland valley of California was a floodplain. This happened in the 1800s, and it's happened in recent history, through the last few thousand years. It's happened multiple times. Anyways, all that to be said, I just saw this morning. I don't know if this is going to be a real thing or not, but this is, fairly frightening, especially if you live in California. Warning. This is from Danielle Langlois. I don't know. Warning, meteorologists are currently debating, that sounds weird, whether California is about to get hit by something they've been dreading for a long time, a series of storms that will drop multiple feet of rain over a few weeks. They're not certain yet, but it is entirely possible that what is brewing in the Pacific, El Nino, right? There is an El Nino. That means warmer waters in the Pacific. That's exactly what El Nino is, right? Is warmer, an upwelling of warm water in the Pacific, creating atmospheric rivers. So it is entirely possible that what is brewing in the Pacific right now heralds the beginning of the dreaded ARC storm. Atmospheric river times 1,000, right? K, ARC. Multiple feet of rain in a month. 100 inches of rain in some areas. Yeah, that's a big deal. The ARC storm is a cyclical catastrophic event that happens every 150 to 200 years. The last one hit in 1861. When it returns, it will do more damage to the state than a major 8.0 earthquake. It will displace millions of people up and down the state. It will destroy roads and bridges. It will leave major metro areas like Los Angeles without clean running water and electricity for weeks. The biggest danger. By the time officials realize they need to evacuate neighborhoods, there won't be enough time and resources to evacuate everyone. The Central Valley will be especially hard hit. It will become a 300-mile-long, 20-mile-wide lake. Their homes will be covered in 10 to 20 feet of floodwater. I know it sounds impossible, but this is a real danger, and it might be here now. So follow meteorologists on Twitter. Keep your eye on local news. Sign up for local Nixle alerts on your phone. Make a plan and be ready to go. But remember, they won't be able to definitively say it's an ARC storm until it's probably too late to leave. So if you're not up for this, evacuate early if circumstances allow. Wow. I mean, I did see that there are weather systems setting up in the Pacific, right? They're actually predicting I don't know if the storm we just had was an atmospheric river, but it was pretty heavy. So, and they're saying that there's more atmospheric rivers setting up in the Pacific. So I don't know. It's something to keep your eye on, I guess. 5 things you need to know about the arc storm, California's other big one. This is from 2011. It's quite old, but historically relevant. Flooding is a very real California problem. Over the years, Southern California's infrastructure has been built up to minimize the impact of storms. Think about the 157 debris basins in the San Gabriel Mountains, or the waterways like the Arroyo Seco, San Gabriel River, and the LA River that were channelized for flood control. Floods are a real issue in Southern California. No one can engineer away all the threats. No one can. When the state talks about a need for levees, we don't think of ourselves as a place like New Orleans. Many places in California would be devastated without levees. A 45-day-long storm in 1861 and 1862 was not even arc storm sized, but it was big enough to produce a lake in the Central Valley 300 miles long and about 20 miles across that lasted for months. Although it drained pretty quickly, in Southern California, a lake formed between the San Gabriel Mountains and Palos Verdes Peninsula, said Jones. This is not science fiction. The Palos Verdes Peninsula and San Gabriel, that's the entire LA basin. The San Gabriel Mountains is where I live. I live right next to the San Gabriel Mountains. I'm actually high enough. I'm up high on the hill enough that I probably wouldn't. I mean, I'm fairly high up the hill, so I probably wouldn't be affected. I mean, if I lost power, that would be bad. But I probably wouldn't be in the floodplain. I'm high enough. I'm above the floodplain. But between the San Gabriel Mountains and the Palos Verdes Peninsula is like the entire Los Angeles basin. Like, it's the entire city. Anyways. If you're in Southern California or California, period, just stay ready, keep your ear to the ground. And they don't even know if this is really in the cards yet. But again, as she said, by the time they figure out whether it's really happening or not, it'll already be happening. But we had major atmospheric rivers last winter, and they really not in the LA basin, but in all of the mountains. The mountains got hammered with feet and feet and feet and feet of snow, and caused some real disruption. Anyways. All right, guys, that does it for me. Before I go, if you enjoy the show, I bring it to you Monday through Friday, every day, 9 a.m. for free 99. And if you like this content and you want to support this content, it's a good way to keep this content coming to you. You can do so at various places. You can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/blackbearnews. You can Cash App me at Red Llama Music. You can Venmo me at Kevin Sandblum. You can PayPal me at paypal.me/Kevin Sandblum. You can Zelle me at kevinsandblum@protonmail.com. All right. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you. I'll see you tomorrow, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Until next time. Peace.